Hey, how's it going and welcome to another Jojo June video. So JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is a series defined by a lot of things: the characters, the stands, the myriad of musical references, and of course, its art. So I wanted to pay tribute to the art of the series by talking about my 15 favorite illustrations of his. Keep in mind, these are illustrations and not manga panels or pages. These are colored illustrations coming from various sources. These all came from the art timeline page on the JoJo wiki, which I'll have linked in the description. I highly suggest you take a look through it since there's a lot of beautiful art, and it's always fun to see the evolution of Araki's style. Starting off, we have this Phantom Blood art that was used as the cover of Weekly Shonen Jump, where JoJo's Bizarre Adventure made its debut all the way back in 1987. I think there's a sort of magical energy in this art that's hard to describe unless you're heavily invested in the series like I am. It's definitely my favorite Phantom Blood illustration, and it's honestly more about what it represents than purely the art itself. There's kind of an innocence captured in it. It's like a time capsule to before the series was a global phenomenon. Although Araki had obviously seen success with works like Bao the Visitor, it's safe to say that Bao didn't exactly take the world by storm. In some alternate reality, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure might have been the same way, just another manga from the annals of history, but that's obviously not what happened. This art is also a nice display of the dichotomy between Jonathan and Dio. On the right, we see Jonathan with bright blue clothes and a doggy, big ol' happy smile on his face. And then we see Dio dressed in purple with a knife and a spooky mask. You don't have to know literally anything about this series to understand it's going to be a story about Jonathan's good and Dio's evil. The two figures clash in a universally understandable way. You can show this picture to anybody from any culture around the world and they'll probably understand Dio bad, Jonathan good. When this was made, JoJo was just that, a little story about two young men and a stone mask. And now here we are, 30 years later. Next is this piece, which was used as the cover for the JoJo 6251 art book, which was released all the way back in 1993. I was -4 years old at the time. It prominently features Josuke, who's my favorite JoJo and favorite character of the series, and likewise it's one of my favorite depictions of him. There's a subdued coolness to this art, which is an aspect of the character I absolutely love. When you compare him to the likes of Jonathan or Jotaro, who come off as a lot more conventionally heroic or shonen badass, Josuke is kinda just the guy. I think that essence is captured very well here. He looks friendly, but strong. I also love the little Morio buildings attached to him, and of course I absolutely dig the colors. The myriad of purples look awesome. There's also these hands, and I'm not exactly sure what these are. It's obviously not Crazy Diamond, nor is it Killer Queen or Star Platinum. It doesn't quite resemble anything. The skull and chains depict evil, so maybe it's just a representation of the evil present in Morio and not anything in particular. But I'm not really sure one way or the other. Maybe it's just there because it looks cool. Here we have one of my favorite Stone Ocean pieces, and it comes from volume 17 of part 6, which happens to be the final volume. This art is gorgeous, and there's a lot of elements throughout it that I really like. Jolene, of course, looks awesome. This is one of my favorite color schemes of hers, and I just really enjoy the overall peaceful vibe that it gives off. Everybody except for that little freakazoid Emporio is calm and serene, almost as if they're at peace with the conclusion of their story. The colors are what do it for me though. I absolutely love the various blues, pinks, and purples throughout it, as well as other details like the moon, the flowers, and it all just comes together to make something really gorgeous. This is one of my absolute favorite pieces of JoJo art, and it apparently comes from Shonen Jump collector's cards which were released in 1995. This depiction of Kira Yoshikage is fucking striking, and is one of the best visual representations of the character Araki has ever done. First we have Kira with an expression that's something beyond smug. It's the face of somebody who has already won. It's as if he's been given the information that all his enemies have been eradicated and he's free to do as he pleases. The eye covered in shadow adds an aura of mystery to him. And of course I dig the pink and purple suit. Then there's Killer Queen whispering sweet nothings into his ear, as if he's delivering the news that nothing can oppose Kira. This art is powerful. It's probably my single favorite drawing of Kira. And whenever I think of the character, I usually think of this image. Next we have our first part 5 piece, and it's from the cover of the 10th volume of Vento Ario. I really enjoyed this one since I think it's a great encapsulation of part 5. Every member of the gang, including Fugo, are present within this G shape. It's one of my favorite illustrations with them all together. Especially since Fugo ends up leaving the group, it's uncommon to see everybody in one shot like this. Then of course there's the massive, looming King Crimson who makes the characters seem so minuscule in comparison. Much like how the gang's power looms over them once they go traitor. Another little detail I really like is the fact that Bucciarati has his eyes closed, alluding to his status as a dead man walking. Plus, now I don't know if you noticed this, but Giorno, he's kinda hitting the dab. This unique art is the cover for the Japanese version of Araki's book, Manga in Theory and Practice, The Craft of Creating Manga, which I actually did a video on this month. This one is unique since it's the first time Araki has drawn a self-portrait in his own style, and I believe it's also the first time he's drawn himself with one of his characters, but I could be wrong about that. Of course, he decided to go with his spirit animal Rohan, and I like this one so much because of how unique it is. It's kind of an anomaly among Araki's artwork, and mangaka in general. Far more often, mangaka depict themselves as more cartoony, like how Hiromu Arakawa represents herself as a cow, or Akira Toriyama as a robot. So getting to see a fully detailed Araki, drawn by Araki, is cool. But it also shows the total love and endearment he has for Rohan and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure as a whole. So much so that he's hugging him, like real close, he's really up in there. This illustration comes from Shonen Jump in 1990, and was also used as the cover for volume 20 of the manga. For me, it's how well the image captures the adventurous spirit of part 3. The international travels involved are one of my favorite things about the part. Avdol is noticeably missing since at the time he was thought to be dead, but the rest of the Crusaders are there. In the sky, we can see larger images of Jotaro and Joseph, which really highlight the differences between the two. While Jotaro is calm and stoic, Joseph is a lot more emotional. I also love seeing Polnareff up in front, proudly extending his arm as they trek across these ruins on their camels, as the sun beats down on their backs. It just screams adventure, possibly even bizarre adventure, which is why I enjoy it so much. Next is this art of Rohan from Thus Spoke Kishibe Rohan Episode 9, The Run. There's a lot of art of Rohan due to his myriad appearances in spin-off material, but this one stands out as being one of my favorites. The colors in this one are especially beautiful. Once again, I am a sucker for the purple background and outfit, but it's the painting and general art within art aesthetic that does it for me. The bits of paint work perfectly for Rohan as a character since he is an artist himself, and it's as if he's being created mid-run. This is one of those pieces I would love to get a high quality print of, and get it signed by Araki, and have Araki draw me a personalized picture of Josuke, and then he would join me for a Jojo June video. Listen, a man can dream. This one comes from a poster used to advertise the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure fighting game, which would later get the updated release you're probably more familiar with, Heritage for the Future. There's a lot going on in this one. It's really dynamic and eye-catching. Imagine being in Japan in the late 90s and seeing this at an arcade or whatever. Your attention would have immediately been grabbed. Every Crusader makes an appearance, with Jotaro naturally being the most prominent, and wearing this really cool star-studded uniform. But we also see some more unconventional appearances from characters like Alessi, Ebony Devil, and others. The whole image is covered in chains and hermit purple vines, and of course there's Dio as the most prominent part of the picture. It's a really striking, cool, mysterious depiction of him, and it gives him an almost unworldly presence, which makes him very powerful looking. This face cocked back with the lips puckered pose is really cool. It reminds me of something you'd see on a Prince album. Here we have this art from Steel Ball Run Volume 24, which is the final volume of the part. For this one, it's the pure simplicity of it that makes it work so well. It's not particularly flashy, there's no one prominent character, no action, just the white background, the text of Steel Ball Run, and all of the most major characters in equally sized bubbles. I think part of why I like it so much is it really reminds me of a movie poster for an old western or even a play. I can just imagine going to a theater to watch Steel Ball Run, the new movie. I also respect how the cover for the final volume of one of the better manga stories ever written has such a subdued image. It speaks for itself in a way, there's no need to be over the top or boisterous about it. The contents of the story speak for themselves. Oh yeah, more part 4. Here's another Kira-centric piece, and it's from the cover of Diamond is Unbreakable Volume 17. For me, this picture is the ultimate depiction of the Bites the Dust arc. Front and center we have Kira and Hayato with clock hands and numbers imposed onto their faces, obviously meant to represent the time rewinding power of Bites the Dust. While Hayato is in both disbelief and terror, Kira is a lot more smug. Of course, we see the little Killer Queen, which is visually speaking one of my favorite stands, and I also really like the color of the background in their skin. It's a very unusual combination of oranges and reds, which works really well with the solid red background. It's almost like the characters themselves are fading into the background. Like another Bites the Dust loop is going to happen and suck Hayato back in time. Next is another Stardust Crusaders illustration, and it comes from the title page of chapter 44 in Shonen Jump. I admittedly have a very petty reason for why this is one of my favorite illustrations, but before I get to that, I really love the energy in this picture. The Crusaders all jumping from somewhere is a cool image, and I really like this pink Polnareff. But no, the real reason why I like this one so much is Hol Horse. Hol Horse is an anomaly in this image, since it's pretty uncommon to see enemy stand users in group shots like this. For me, this art is almost like a view into another possible reality, one where Hol Horse joined the Stardust Crusaders. In the 10th Jojonium for Stardust Crusaders, Araki talks about how he did in fact toss around the idea of letting him join the group. I'm not going to read off the whole commentary, here it is on screen. However, it's very apparent that even Araki himself wonders what could have been, but ultimately was happy with his decision to exclude him. This one comes from Hirohiko Araki's Ripples of Adventure art exhibition, which was hosted to celebrate the 30th anniversary of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. I really love this one. It's one of my favorite depictions of Dio, in fact. Starting with the man himself, I love how his art subtly shows the more philosophical side to the character. It's reminiscent of the sculpture The Thinker, and that was likely an inspiration. Dio is likewise shown deep in thought in a similar pose. There's a lot of little details in it too, like the ladybug on his belt, which is reminiscent of Giorno's, or the stone mask sitting comfortably on his leg. Then we see the moon and the world, a depiction of both of his abilities, stands and vampiric powers, working together in harmony. Another Steel Ball Run illustration, this one comes from the cover of Volume 17. This one is a great visual summary of the final battle against Funny Valentine, and most of the major participants are here. Starting with D4C, who's right in the front, I really enjoy this art of the stand, since it shows him in a very serene light. It's as if he's floating upwards and all the other characters fall behind him, much like how his abilities far outclass theirs. Then we see the crew, with one of my favorite depictions of Diego, as well as Johnny, Diego, Lucy, and Wakapipo. Further behind them, you can see a very nice but subtle depiction of mountains with the horses and these pretty pink and purple trees. I don't know who likes pink and purple more, me or Araki. Then going straight down the middle, we see a line of steel balls. You'll notice some of them are actually Wakapipos. And the man himself, Funny, drawn as more of a sketch above everybody else. Finally, we arrive at what's maybe my favorite piece of JoJo art, but there's a lot of really strong contenders here, so I don't want to say for certain. But this one definitely evoked some of the strongest feelings from me. It's the title page for Diamond is Unbreakable chapter 108. And like the previous piece, I love this one because it's a beautiful encapsulation of part 4. All of the major characters of Morio are assembled, hands held up in the sky. Except for Yukako, who's reaching for Koichi's hand. Each character also has an expression that tells a lot about their personality. Rohan, the Cinderella that he is obviously not super thrilled with this group hug, but is giving the thumbs up nonetheless. Okuyasu is excited. Jotaro has the look of, yeah, I've been through this before. Koichi looks up in awe at their combined effort. I don't know what's going on with Yukiko, I think she's about to pass out. But it's just my favorite crew from my favorite part, unified in their desire to catch Kira Yoshikage. It's a great piece, and one of my favorite depictions of the bizarre summer of 1999. Anyways, that's been the video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.